I was writing out in preparation for today, what are some things that wouldn't happen if mom didn't show up? And these are just a few things that I came up with. The toast is burnt, the dog goes hungry, there's nothing clean to wear, Sissy is late for school, brother's science project gets left in the laundry room, the grapes go unwashed, the moldy orange in the bowl gets moldier, there's no extra toilet paper in the bathroom when you really need it, boo-boos go unkissed, and no one, absolutely no one, has any idea what's for dinner. Is this not true? Moms, you guys hold it together, and today we want to appreciate you. And whether you're sitting next to your mom, whether you're missing your mom today because maybe she is in heaven, whether you're maybe a little angry at your mom because she said something to you today, this morning, wherever you're at, today is our day to honor moms and to say thank you. And I love what writer Max Lucado says about mothering. He says, only a mom can spend a day wiping noses, laundering enough socks for the Yankees, balancing a checkbook down to $1.27, and still mean it when she says, thank you, God, for my kids. Only a mom can discern which teen is entering the door just by the sound of the key in the lock. And Reader's Digest this month said, no one is as glued to any piece of reading material as a parent counting down the songs in the program for a school concert. Isn't it so true? My son Ethan, this is a picture of him when he was about 8 years old. He was an old soul. And so he said when he was 8 years old, you're never more alive than when you're almost dead. It's like, yes, Ethan, you're never more alive than when you're almost dead. That's right. When he was 10 years old, he said, the purpose of money is to spend it on things that daddy likes. That's right. That was a good lesson. He learned that one well. And then my husband, he would get like the Wall Street Journal and like some news magazines and stuff. So Ethan, 11 years old, he'd come into the kitchen for breakfast and he'd be like, Mom, have you seen The Economist? And I'm just like, who is this? Who asks these kinds of questions? And when he was 14, he said, who invented sisters? God. If it was anyone else, I'd sue. That's what he said, there's two younger sisters. But my favorite Ethanism was he would say, instead of saying, I don't care, so if I said like, hey, do you want to go out to Italian or Chinese? And he didn't care, he'd be like, I don't care. But instead of saying that, he'd say, I just want what you want. I just want what you want. And I'm just like, who comes up with these kinds of statements? I just want what you want. So the next time you really want to say to your spouse, I don't care, instead just say it, I just want what you want. And all of a sudden you'll score all these points with your spouse and you'll be saying the same thing. So that's my free tip for you as a family. I just want what you want. And you know what? That's what we want for our kids. We want to say to God, Lord, I just want what you want for these kids. And today we're specifically going to talk about launching adults. How can we raise our kids with confidence so that we can launch them out successfully as adults? And you know what? My heart and my prayer is you don't have to be a parent in the room to get something out of this, because you are either going to be helping someone launch an adult, or sometimes we ourselves, we have to kind of stop babying ourselves and be like, oh, I got to launch out myself. Like, I need some maturation myself. So this is a message for parents, and it's a message for all of us, because we are struggling. Many of us are struggling with growing up, getting mature. Consider this sign that was posted at an all-boys school. And this sign elicited like over 4,000 comments on social media. It really struck a nerve. And here's what the sign said. Stop. If you are dropping off your son's forgotten lunch, books, homework, equipment, etc., please turn around and exit the building. Your son will learn to problem solve in your absence. Do you think that they were having a problem in that office that made them make that sign, right? They're like, okay, we are dealing with so many parents, let's just make a sign. And you know what? We are in the business, especially moms, we're really good at kind of doing, more for our children than we really need to be. So I remember when Ethan was going to middle school, and he got the school-issued iPad, and he's supposed to go to school with the iPad. He would ride his bike to school. He did not have a phone. And so he left one morning, and I'm just, walking around the house, and I see the iPad on the kitchen table, right? And what do I think? Oh my goodness, does he need this? Does he have a test today? Is he gonna be in trouble? Is he gonna not be able to take notes? Like, what's gonna happen to him? Should I go to school? Like, what should I do? Like, I can't text him to say, do you really need your iPad today? What should I do? And I'm thinking about this sign, right? I'm thinking, what should I do? Because moms, we are so good at coming to the rescue. You know, when the kids would be biking to school, if it was just like a little bit gray and like the tiniest bit of mist, I'd be like, oh, it might rain. I'll drive you guys, you know? But my husband James would be like, oh, just put on a rain jacket. You're gonna be fine. Like, it's San Diego, you know? I remember I cut their fingernails, right? I trim all their fingernails till they're like 20. You're still trimming, no, I'm kidding. But then you realize like, okay, you probably are big. You should do this yourself. We're doing dishes. And they'll be like my kids, I cook the dinner usually and the kids do the dishes. And so, but there's a dish that's really dirty. What will I say as a mom? Oh, I'll just let that soak, guys. I'll take care of that later. Because moms, we like to make the way easy. We like to help our kids. And sometimes it's great, but sometimes it's too much. So moms, I know a lot of times you're just like, I have so much to do. So as my Mother's Day gift to you, my first point is my gift, that you are going to have now less to do because launching adults requires less rescuing. All the things we think we have to do for our kids, maybe we would be better off and they would be better off if we just let them alone and just let them reap the consequences of whatever they did or did not do. So less rescuing. You're familiar with the term helicopter parent, right? It's that mom, that dad that's hovering so close, that knows everything, that's kind of in the business of the child. Well, this term was developed in 1990 by Foster Cline and Jim Fay, these child researchers. And what they meant by helicopter parent was they were referring to any parent who hovered over their child in such a way that runs counter to the parent's responsibility to raise a child to independence. So my responsibility is to raise a child who can pack their own lunch, who can do their own laundry, who can do their homework without being asked, who can go to sleep on time and wake up by themselves without me waking them. All those things, that's my job, to raise them to independence. But sometimes the helicopter parent, what do? We do all that stuff for them, so they never learn how to do these things. So the helicopter parent, it's nothing that we set out to do, but as we think about it, we think, okay, wait a minute. It's good to be involved in your kid's life, but it's not good to be over-involved in our kid's life. So they did this lab test with parents and kids. And the task was, how many puzzles could the child complete in 10 minutes? Now, the parents were not forbidden to help, but they were also not encouraged to help. And what they found in this 10-minute experiment was that the children who exhibited a lot of social anxiety, who were coming because they were socially anxious, that their parents touched the puzzles a whole lot more than the other parents. They were these helicopter parents, right? That were like, okay, kid, we only got 10 minutes. Let's see what we can do. We gotta crush it. Okay, this piece goes with this piece, and what does this piece, and what does it? So they were super involved, the helicopter parents. And then these kids were more socially anxious, because you can imagine if you grow up with this parent hovering over you, you're always thinking, am I doing it right? Is this the way to do it? Is this right? Versus the parent that just was like, okay, let's see how many puzzles you can do. We got 10 minutes. And just let your kid do it. And then if your kid asks you a question, where does this corner piece go? You can help your kid. But see the difference in just something like that. So put yourself in the situation. What kind of parent are you? What kind of parent do you want to be? And you know, this doesn't just apply to children, little children, it applies to big children too. You know, many of you are adult children and you feel the wind of your mother or your father helicoptering over your life, okay? So for the parent, it's a call to, like, you know what, give your adult child more space. Jim Burns says it this way, and I love this statement. I think it's very insightful. To adult children, unsolicited advice sounds like criticism. The key is for the moms to not give unsolicited advice to the adult children, to wait till that advice is sought after. But then for adult children, you need to realize you have such a wealth of information, of love in your mother, in your aunts and uncles, in your father, in your grandparents. And instead of looking to social media for your answers, ask your own family, the people a generation ahead of you, for help. And believe me, that advice is going to be a lot more sound. And so for parents, give your children some more space, your adult kids. But for adult kids, invite your parent to give you advice. They actually know things. They really do. They actually know things. And so as we go into launching adults, we at the Pelican household, we are in a practicum period. One thing that I don't want for Ethan as he launches out is to be part of like the snowflake, we don't know what to do culture in college. This is what Julie Lythcott-Himes writes in her book, How to Raise an Adult, and she was the dean of freshmen at Stanford. So she was seeing a lot of kids transitioning into college. And here's what she said. My colleagues and I at Stanford began to notice a new phenomenon: parents on the college campus, virtually and literally. Each subsequent year would bring an increase in the number of parents who did things like seek opportunities, make decisions, and problem solve for their sons and daughters. Things that college-age students used to be able to do for themselves. This was not only happening at Stanford, mind you, it was happening at four-year colleges and universities all around the country. So mamas, we gotta step back. When kids are in college, it's their job to pick their classes and to figure out their meal plan and to work it out with their roommate and to figure out transportation to church and figure all this stuff out, because it's their practicum of like, how do I become an adult? And if we as parents are constantly rescuing, constantly doing, constantly intervening, that's not going to help them to grow to maturity. That's not going to help them launch out. So how can we follow a biblical model? What does the Bible show us of how do we launch a child into an adult? And there's this beautiful verse about Samuel. Now, Samuel is such a great boy to look at for Mother's Day because his mother, Hannah, she struggled with infertility. She wanted a baby so bad. She told the Lord, if you give me a baby, I'll give him to you for your service. He did give her a baby. She did give him for service, and she dropped Samuel off at the priesthood, and she said goodbye, and she didn't have any other children, and she was just happy to give Samuel to the Lord. And 1 Samuel 2:26 says this, and the boy Samuel continue to grow in stature and in favor with the Lord and with people. So insert your daughter's name, insert your son's name. Wouldn't it be nice to say, and Melissa continued to grow in stature and in favor with the Lord and with people, right? That's what you want for them. And so when you see your child work through different things, don't take all the struggle away. Let them struggle, let them work it out. And notice they're gaining favor with God and with people. They're not gaining favor on social media. They're not gaining favor in video games. They're not gaining favor with Netflix and Disney because they're their best subscribers, okay? This is not where they're gaining favor. And for our kids to grow, we have to give them experiences with God and with people so they can grow. Jesus has these very similar words used about him and his growing up that we find, so 1 Samuel being echoed in Luke 2:40, and the child being Jesus grew and became strong, filled with wisdom, and the favor of God was upon him. You think, well, of course the favor of God. He's the Son of God. Of course the favor of God was upon him. Can you imagine the pressure of being Mary? Like, talk about over-parenting, like thinking like, oh, what would God want me to do? He's literally like his dad, like, I hope I'm doing it the way he would want to do. And yet here's Mary, and she apparently was able to let go because he is growing up in maturity and in favor. And so we find in the Bible this equation for maturity. And it's not just for children, it's for us as adults as well, but it starts in our childhood, and we find it in Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 5. We also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, character, and character, hope. And if there's something that's lacking in the world right now, it's hope. That there are a lot of areas in the world that are hopeless, whether it's war, whether it's famine, whether it's wokeness, whether it's schools, whatever it is. We are in a place, suicide, all these places where it is hopeless. And if we look at the scripture, it gives us a clue of why we are in this hope famine. And take a look at this stair-stepping. First, there's suffering. And then comes the perseverance through getting through that suffering. Out of that, there is character that is built. And out of that, you experience hope because you realize when the suffering comes, I can make it. God will help me. So if your kid says, I don't want to go to school today, I'm super depressed, I don't want to go to school today, it's awful, blah, 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 like let me stay home. And you say, okay, you can stay home. Now, if you do that once, I'm not going to be all mad at you. That's great. That's fine. You know your kid best. But you know what I'm saying. You do that a little bit more. That's a little bit much. So let's say you're like, no, buddy, sorry. You have to go to school. It's what we do, and you just got to go to school. So what does that do? That's suffering, right? There's suffering in math class. There's suffering. But what does it build? Perseverance, that they've got to show up. They learn, okay, I have to show up to places even though I don't want to. That's called self-control. That is a key character trait. They're learning patience with maybe the annoying person that's at their table. They're learning patience with their teacher. So they're learning things, and then it gives them hope, like, I can do this again. This wasn't that hard, I can do it again. And so when we protect our kids from suffering, thinking like, oh, let me shield them from all suffering, from all pain, let me rescue them, let me bubble wrap them, then you lose this equation, because without that suffering, they had no chance to persevere. They had no chance to develop that character. And when it's time to be hopeful or hopeless, it's real easy to say, I'm hopeless. I don't know what to do. I fall really fast because I've never had to try at anything. You know, when Ethan was in kindergarten, a lot of times kids get hurt on bikes out in the real world. But our child got hurt on a bike in our own living room, so we have a spin bike, okay? So we've got this spin bike at home, and Ethan in kindergarten, he's riding it, he's having fun. Well, he got it spinning really fast. And then he took his legs out, and then he put his legs back in, and when he put his leg back in, the pedal hit him right there, boom, right? So, my goodness, can you imagine? So he broke his leg right in our living room. So here's a picture of him with his cast. So he is in kindergarten. He has this cast for 6 weeks. It's the last 6 weeks of school. So we feel so sorry for him, suffering, right? Kindergarten, who can't play, who can't run, who can't jump, suffering. Mom, me, having to go to school every day to help him go to the bathroom because he needed assistance to go to the bathroom, and then the teacher could not do that. So suffering for mom every day going to school, taking Ethan to the bathroom. But do you know, in that perseverance of having to do that, and the character that was not only built in Ethan, but what I saw in his classmates, it was like the cutest thing I ever saw. So we'd go in the classroom, and if Ethan stood up to have to get something or anything, if he stood up, then immediately 2 or 3 other kindergartners, they'd stand up with him, and they walk with him like, do you need something? Do you need something? If he stood up and he was gonna go to sit down, all these kids would come around him, all of them, and they want to put the seat underneath him. When it was time for recess, there's this one little kid that would always beat all the other kids and throw the door open so Ethan could go outside. When it was time to race, everyone would be running around, and of course Ethan couldn't race. There's this little blonde girl, and she would race with Ethan. So Ethan would race like this, and she would totally be like this and racing with him. And it was the cutest thing I saw ever. It was so darling. And I thought, look at the character qualities that this suffering brought out in Ethan and in the other kids to look after him. It blew my mind. And so kids, when given the chance to blossom through adversity and to help other kids, they'll do it. And it's awesome. And so that produced so much hope. Like, you're going to make it, buddy. So the day came for him to get that cast off, and you'll see it in this next photo. And look, his little leg is so tiny. So his little tiny, like Bambi, right? Like little Bambi leg. And then it started all over again, because you think, yay, the cast is off. And then, of course, it had atrophied, not being used for 6 weeks. And so he couldn't even walk on it. He couldn't do anything. And so now it was time for what? Physical therapy. And it was painful, and it was exercise, and it was hard. But we saw it, that in kindergarten, because he suffered in this way and had to persevere, I think it's what led to him being like how I was telling you, like kind of the strange kid that understood things very fast. That suffering helped him to mature quickly. And so when we look at our kids and the suffering that they may face, for us to realize, you know what? Maybe that's why the Bible says to glory in your suffering, because there's something good that can come out of it. Dan Kindlin, he's a child psychologist, a lecturer at Harvard, says this about physical pain. It's like the way our body's immune system develops. You have to be exposed to pathogens or your body won't know how to respond to an attack. Kids also need exposure to discomfort, failure, and struggle. I know parents who call up the school to complain if their kid doesn't get to be in the play or make the cut for the baseball team. I know of one kid who said he didn't like another kid in the carpool, so instead of having their child learn to tolerate the other kid, they offered to drive him to school themselves. By the time they're teenagers, they have no experience with hardship. Civilization is about adapting to less than perfect situations, yet parents often have this instantaneous reaction to unpleasantness, which is, I can fix this. And so moms, dads, let's not do that. Let's not rush to fix. Back to Ethan's iPad, remember, I never really told you what I did with it. So I looked at that thing all day, and I just thought, like, you know what? Let's just let him live with the consequences. I'm thinking about that sign. I'm like, let's just let him live with the consequences. He comes home, and I'm just like, Ethan, what happened? Did you make it? Did you make it? I'm just like dying, like, did you make it? And he's looking at me like, what's wrong with you, Mom? And he looked at me, he goes, oh, the iPad? He's like, oh, I figured it out, Mom. It's really not a big deal. It's like, okay, well, I've been worried about it for the last 6 hours. So a lot of times we as parents, we are worried about all these things that it's okay. Like, it will get worked out. And so for us to rescue less, so launching adults means it's okay to have suffering, and we need to rescue our kids less. And guess what that does? It allows them to see God more. Let God rescue them, that we don't have to be the rescuers. God could be the rescuers. And maybe it's us that we're like, Lord, if you could please rescue me from this bad job, from this relationship, from this annoying person, from this problem, from this physical ailment, if you could rescue me, that would be really great. But maybe it's, you know what, child of mine, I'm just going to have you sit there a little bit longer so you can learn that suffering and that perseverance and that character and find hope. So be patient, and by being patient, it helps us to mature. So we're going to rescue less. And then the next thing I want us to consider is, when your child launches out of your house, how would you know that you did it? Like, what would make you think, like, this was a success, I did it? Like, what are your highest goals as a parent for your children? Well, I went to the D6 Family Conference recently in Orlando, Florida, and one of the speakers talked about that they had done these surveys, and that most parents want these 3 things for their children. They want success, they want happiness, for their child to be happy, and they want morality, for their child to be a moral person. And I think most of us parents, grandparents, we'd look at that list and say, yeah, I want my kid to be successful, I want my kid to be happy, I want my kid to be moral. Yeah. But then the speaker challenged and said, does this seem like a different list if you're a Christian or if you're not a Christian, if you're a follower of Christ or not a follower of Christ? I mean, I think most parents want this. They want success, they want happiness, they want morality. And what he proposed is something I want to propose to us today, is that really that higher goal is launching adults who love God. It's not about success. It's not that they're happy. It's not that they're moral. Now, we hope all those things, but maybe they're not successful. Maybe they're persecuted because they're a Christian and they're believing in what they believe in. That would be good, right? So for us to readjust and say, you know what, this is not the lens. It's not like what my child, what college is my child going to get into? What sport are they going to play? How popular are they going to be? Are they happy? That these are not necessarily the big questions. The bigger question is, does my child love God? Am I raising my child to know God, to love God? Is the Great Commission, is that something that drives my life, drives my parenting? Think of it, Jesus, he's going to leave the earth, he's going to give his disciples, here's your big to-do. Here's your priority. And think of it in the lens of parenting. Matthew 28:19, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. And behold, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. So as we're parenting, am I trying to make small disciples? Is that my goal, to raise tiny disciples who know Christ? Am I raising them so that when they come of age, they'll want to be baptized and we'll see them get water baptized? Am I raising them to love the nations, to care about people in other countries and to help them? Are these the questions that are informing how do we spend a Saturday? How do we spend money? Do we go to church every Sunday? All those different things. That's what should inform us launching an adult, not who only loves people or loves their job or loves the planet or loves kittens or loves what, but really most importantly, raising a child, launching an adult who loves God, that this would be our primary passion. And maybe we've got to do some tinkering to put that back into the right place. How do we do it? What does it look like? Back to Samuel gives us a clue, 2:21. The Lord's gracious to Hannah. Remember Hannah dropping off Samuel. She gives birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. So she gives up Samuel to the Lord gives her back 5. That's God's math. God is really cool at math. So she has now 5 kids. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. How did Samuel grow up in the presence of the Lord? Well, we know the Bible tells us in the Lord's presence there is fullness of joy. We know there would be peace in the presence of the Lord. There would be maybe singing, the preaching of the word, because how are we going to have faith? By hearing the word of God. So these are things that we can ask, are these things found in my home? Is there joy in my home? And how can I get more of that? Because you and I know that a lot of kids, instead of being raised in an atmosphere of the presence of the Lord, in the Bible, that is shown as Jerusalem. Jerusalem is always shown as the city of God. It's where the presence of God dwells. It's the holy city, Jerusalem. And then the other side, dun, 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 it's like the empire. It's Babylon. That's the city of the world. That's the city of the devil. That's the city of demons. It's Babylon. Well, today, many kids, they're not being raised in a godly culture. They're being raised in what researchers have called digital Babylon, in a digital world that's very un-Christian. You just have to go on any social media platform or YouTube video for 2 seconds to realize it is an un-Christian world. So we have to ask ourselves, okay, if my highest priority is launching a kid who loves God, well, how are they spending their time? What are they in the presence in most? Your screen time can be used for God, 100%, absolutely. But is that how most kids are using it? No. Here's what Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis says about progress that I think is so spot on, decades ago. We all want progress, but progress means getting nearer to the place where you want to be. And if you have taken a wrong turning, then to go forward does not get you any nearer. If you are on the wrong road, progress means doing an about turn and walking back to the right road. And in that case, the man who turns back soonest is the most progressive man. We have all seen this when doing arithmetic. When I've started a sum the wrong way, the sooner I admit this and go back and start over again, the faster I shall get on. There is nothing progressive about being pig-headed and refusing to admit a mistake. And I think if you look at the present state of the world, it is pretty plain that humanity has been making some big mistakes. We are on the wrong road. And if that is so, we must go back. Going back is the quickest way on. And I think for a lot of us in our homes, instead of saying, well, we got to keep progressing with everyone else. Everyone else has these devices. Everyone else is on YouTube. Everybody else is on TikTok. We just got to go with them. We're all going down the wrong path. And the most progressive of us will realize this is the wrong path. This isn't taking us, my family, where I want it to go. I'm going to make a 180. We're going to go a different way. All right, so you know we want to launch kids who love God. And I just want a special word of love to the single moms out there, because I know having James with me, it's nice to have someone bounce ideas off of and also do things. And I can't imagine having to do this all by yourself and oftentimes with your ex competing against the values that you're trying to put into your children. There is a ministry called Life of a Single Mom, and I write articles for them. And one of the ladies, Quinn Cummings, wrote this I thought was really beautiful. This is what Quinn writes. The realization that I would be a single mom didn't set in all at once. Once it did set in, it was like a weight I'd never felt before. The voices were loud in my head. How did you end up here? How can you raise him without a father fully present? You're going to fail him. I would squeeze my eyes shut and pray that God would take these thoughts away. And while I knew that prayer works, I also knew this negative self-talk wouldn't go away if I didn't change something. And I admire her because she's like, I got to change something. So the thing she changed was she started reading with her child 20 minutes a day. She knew, like, I can't do everything, but I can do 20 minutes every night and read. I remember, she says, reading a book about bullying with him. He had just turned 5. And we started a chapter book written in verse. I'm not sure I even got to the 3rd chapter before he began to detail about a bully at his school. In that 20 minutes spent reading a book, you've broken through your fears and fed your child light. You've allowed them to embrace a character's life and problems only for a moment. And just like that, you're helping to shape your child's world and preparing them for life. And really just reading with your child, talking with your child, preparing them for life, such a beautiful thing. I know there are many of you who you're taking care of your older mom, your older dad, and your dreams of just kind of hanging out, they don't exist, because you're taking care, and it's active. And on the weekends, you're taking care of them, and on the weekdays, you're taking care of them. And, we've been talking about Samuel, and David, of course, Samuel's the one who will anoint David as king. And David, before he was king, he was running away from Saul, who was trying to kill him, who wrongly thought David was trying to, seek out the kingdom from underneath him. So he's running away from Saul. It's a terrible time in his life. But there's this little verse in 1 Samuel that shows that when David was going through a terrible time in his life, running from Saul, trying to keep his men alive, trying to keep them fed, hiding in cliffs, all this, he takes care of his parents. David does. He takes care of his parents. And in 1 Samuel 22, 3 and 4, we read this. Later, David went to Mizpah in Moab, which is where his grandmother Ruth would have been from, Moab, where he asked the king, please allow my father and mother to live here with you until I know what God is going to do for me. So David's parents stayed in Moab with the king during the entire time David was living in his stronghold. And this little verse, you know what it shows? The heart of David to take care of his parents. And you know what? If you are taking care of your parents, God sees you, and it's such a beautiful way. We know it's the 5th commandment, honor your father and mother. And it's not just for little kids who we're trying to tell them not to sass back to their parents, but it's for adult kids. It's for 60-year-old kids and 70-year-old kids and 50-year-old kids who take care of their parents. And so today, know that you are celebrated, that you are loved, and what you're doing really pleases God, brings a smile to God's face. And you know what? If you didn't have a mom who gave those things to you, you can know that you have a heavenly Father who loves you so much, who sees what you do, and who will reward you, that in heaven you will hear well done, good and faithful servant, that the things that you do for others, for your family, those things do not go unseen.